and finding out more about his personal brand and what brought him to Side Hustle Nation in the first place. Hey, Nick, how are you?
I'm doing well, Megan. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And I'm so excited to be chatting to you because, like I said, I'm an avid listener to your podcast and I have learned so much from some of your guests. But I'm super interested. How did you get started with side hustle? Like, that's not something we don't go to school and think, when I grow up, side hustle, that's going to be my thing.
That's going to be my thing. Well, first of all, thank you for tuning in. I mean, for me, it was the Side Hustle Nation project and podcast started as a side project to the original side hustle that I was running at the time, which had turned into my full-time thing. And that was kind of in a random niche that was in the footwear comparison shopping space, where it would pull in the product catalogs from Amazon and Zappos and a bunch of these other stores and tell you where you could find the best price on your next pair of shoes. That site operated on an affiliate basis where if somebody ordered shoes through the site or through my link, the site would earn a commission on that. And so that was the main thing for a lot of years. And it was on the side from that where it's like, all right, let me order up this podcast mic, let's see, is this thing on? Is anybody listening? And the show kind of took on a life of its own, relatively speaking, in the first couple of years. And that's kind of shifted to become the full-time focus.
Awesome. How do you decide what guests you're going to have on? Because you have an array of different topics.
Yes, this has been a lot of fun. At first, early on, I was trying to find kind of pseudo celebrity guests in the, online business type of space, but I kind of found a little bit of a different niche in trying to source some stories that hadn't been told on, dozens of other podcasts. And nowadays, a lot of those kind of bubble up from inside the community. Something will catch my attention in the Facebook group. Somebody will message me like, "Hey, have you heard of so and so? They're doing some interesting things." And the broad theme of the show is like, "Hey, how do you make extra money in your spare time?" And trying to find either examples of people who've done that or some interesting marketing or productivity tactics that would help facilitate that type of business growth. So that's the main idea that I try and aim for of the show, and start every episode with like, okay, what's the hook? What's the compelling hook that's outside of the we've done a handful of just kind of generic freelancing type of episodes, and those tend to do okay. But it's like, okay, what's, especially after now 400 episodes, what's the interesting, kind of takeaway? And this was a lesson learned from one of the very early episodes, was this guy had earned enough money on Fiverr, like freelancing on Fiverr, to buy a house. And at the time, this was still known as the $5 marketplace, and they've kind of gone up market a little bit since then. Was like, wait a minute, how did that work? How did you sell? What did you possibly sell for $5? He's like, Nick, it's all about the upsells. I was like, okay, so he kind of enlightened me. But it was, using that hook, hey, he made enough money on Fiverr in his first year to buy a house. Like, oh, okay. Rather than, how to get started freelancing on Fiverr or something. So trying to put that hook forward with each of the episodes to draw new listeners in.
Real life examples. Yeah, no, I love that. I really actually enjoy your episodes where you have regular people on them. And I'm similar to you. When I started the podcast, I wanted the biggest names. I wanted like the well-known people, because I thought, oh, that's going to build my podcast and it's going to be more interesting for my listeners, etc. When in actual fact, the lesser known people that I have on the podcast are generally the ones that do the best, because one, they're super excited that they're on it, so they share it wide as well with their audience. But secondly, They're more relatable, because they're at a stage where most of us that are listening we can understand where they're at. They haven't made $1 million. They're not living in a yacht and have all these homes all over the place. We can actually still relate to them. They're on their journey at the moment. They're being successful. They're doing great things, and we can learn from them. And that's, I think, the stories from your podcast that I really love. Now, how on earth do you not end up doing everything? Because I listen to some of your podcasts and I'm like, oh my God, I need a YouTube channel. Oh no, I need a list for this. I need to get this. And and shiny object syndrome. You go all over the place. And how do you kind of control yourself? Because you can't do everything, not well anyway.
Not well, anyways. I think that's the key. It's dangerous because I mean that for me that's the mark of a good episode when I can hang up and and I'm thinking I gotta do this. I gotta try this. So there's an episode coming out next week on this guy who's renting out portable hot tubs and is like this is fascinating to me. Just puts them in the back of the pickup truck, rents them out, $400 a month or something, and was he had me looking on Craigslist and some of the Facebook marketplaces to see if I could find one of these used hot tubs. So it is dangerous, but for me, it's kind of like okay, the focus, and even if you're not going to apply the specific business that somebody's doing, usually there's some element, something that you can take away and apply that at least I can apply selfishly to my own operation and say, okay, that's interesting how they're approaching their Facebook group or how they're approaching email marketing or how they're generating leads from YouTube or something. Like there's always some little element that may not be it may not be a direct copy and paste from this person's business model, but it's like, okay, I can definitely integrate that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. One of the episodes I listened to of yours a while back was about affiliate marketing, and because I would listen to your podcast, and I kind of thought to myself, how is this guy making money? Because you're putting out a lot of great content, but I'm not paying for it because I'm not sending a check every time I listen to your podcast, unless Spotify does. I'm not sure. And I was
No, no.
they're not. We should talk to them about that. So I visit your website and I'm obviously clicking on some of the links. And so you're using that affiliate model as part of your business. Is that right?
For me, the three big legs of the revenue stool have been sponsorships on the podcast, which have become a pretty meaningful income stream in the last few years. Affiliate offers through the website, and then my own kind of side hustle experiments, and maybe that's self-publishing and that's selling stuff on eBay and that's other affiliate sites, and there's a bunch of stuff that kind of would fall under that third category.
Yeah, awesome. You also wrote a book. Can you tell us a bit about what we would find in that?
Yeah, so this is at sidehustlenation.com/book. This is, I believe, free on Kindle. If it's not, send me a note and I'll send you a copy of it. But it's kind of like intro to side hustles. It covers kind of the three main business models that I see out there. Those are selling a product, selling a service, and then building some type of audience-based business. Maybe you call it selling content, that's monetized with ads, monetized with affiliates, monetized with products and services. You got a lot of options in the third category in this audience-based business, but the disadvantage compared to the first two is it usually takes a little bit of time to ramp that up and really get things going.
Well, that's working with your personal brand, I guess.
It is, it's a long-term thing, but it's 100% worthwhile to start to pursue.
How do you think that works long term? So personal branding's my thing. I think it's super important. People buy from people. If you've got a strong personal brand, like it can take you in lots of different careers over the years. Like you as a person can adapt, etc. Same as a business has a service. It might start with, Kodak started with a camera that was film, and now they've got digital, except, well, they didn't do too well with that. But, they adapt. Companies adapt with their services, their products, etc. As a person, if you've built an online audience, how do you think that that's going to work in 10, 15 years' time as we start adapting our technology as well? Do you think that will last, or what's going to happen?
That's kind of an interesting idea. I think if people are paying attention to you because they kind of resonate with your voice and your style and your message, then if you want to pivot that, I probably wouldn't just rip off that Band-Aid or rip off that duct tape like immediately and say, okay, starting on January 1st, I'm going to only be talking about something completely separate. Like that would probably do your existing audience a disservice. But if they're following you, if they're there along for the journey, if you're still in there to help them, I think some sort of pivot and evolution is probably natural. Like I feel like I've saw, when I started Side Hustle Nation in 2013, this was like before becoming a parent. There was I'm in a very different place in life today. And so I think my attitude and tone has like softened a little bit, whereas like, hustle, hustle, hustle. What's your excuse? Come on. And now it's like, look, there's take your time. There's more. There's more than one way to get it done. Sorry, Megan, I lost your audio.
Oh, you've lost me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're back.
Oh, I'm back. Yeah, and I think that's the difference between having your Instagram famous and your niche famous type people, and how you actually focus on building your brand and stuff. And I think the way you've done it is great, because I'm not a massive fan of the hustle, 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 because I think a lot of us build businesses for freedom, for flexibility, etc. So if you end up doing more hours for less money than you did in your corporate gig, have you really done yourself any service? But I think that what I love about what you're doing is with the side hustles is there's a lot of kind of income that comes while you're sleeping. That's really important. Things that are giving you freedom and being able to, yeah, you have to work hard. Nothing is easy. You've got to put in the slog at the beginning so that you can then take a seat back and actually enjoy it as well. Do you think a lot of your listeners see that side, or do you see a lot of it being like hustle hard?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on where they're at in their life. Like, hopefully, for the younger portion of the audience, like they have the time and energy and maybe the necessity to do so. Whereas the uh, more more experienced, I don't know, more experienced, more aged, like more people who look like me at this stage, can take things a little bit slower. I mean, in general, that's like one benefit of the side hustle. Like, hopefully you have this day job that is paying your rent, that's covering your bills. It kind of gives you the freedom to ramp something up slowly on the side, low risk on the side, that gives you energy, right? You don't want this, the side hustle does not need to be a second job that you hate. It
Yeah.
needs to be something that you look forward to doing, because if you dread the work, like what's the point of that? And of course, there's going to be periods of sprint and periods of rest, and but if you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, like if it's just sprint for the foreseeable next 10 years, like I don't know if that's something that you want to sign yourself up for.
I don't think it's maintainable either. It's, because I think it's like a new relationship starting a business. It's very exciting at the beginning and you've got that honeymoon period and everything. But then there are parts of your business, because there's parts of everyone's business that you don't love, whether it's the accounts or if it's the marketing, depending on where your strengths are, that it starts to wane. So I love the idea of the side hustle where you can have your main business, but you can continue to do things on the side that interest you, and that can change, that can continually change.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been doing the show for a while, these live streams for a while. Like, what have you found as the most effective, like, marketing channel, like the most bang for your marketing buck here?
Oh, I mean, the first few LinkedIn lives that I did, I don't think anyone even saw them other than my mum and dad. And I thought I'm just going to keep going. And now I go to events, and in real life, people will tell me about episodes that they've listened to or watched, and I'll get messages from people. And that's because you get a lot of static to begin with, where you think, oh, it's not worth it. And I think that's the difference, is whether you give up or not. Because I think if you do something well and you keep doing it, no matter what it is, as long as it's going to serve someone, it will eventually start paying off. So yeah, this has been worth it for me, because I'm not a natural writer. So being on video and speaking to people, and people generally love the Scottish accent. So whether they're actually listening to what I'm saying or not is another thing, but they like the accent.
I was going to say, it's like, you don't sound like you're from Western Australia, but
You
okay.
I just like to confuse people.
Yeah. I think that's an important point. It's like, even if no one is tuning in at the beginning, and probably not a ton of people are going to be tuning in at the beginning, but you almost have to go through that phase of just getting in the reps, right? I'll give the example of, like, the first 50 episodes. Like, it probably took at least that long, maybe even 100 episodes, to feel like I hit my stride as a podcast host. It's just the weekly repetition of producing the show. You kind of tend to get better at it. And one of the, at least I hope I've gotten better at it. And there's some evidence from, like, Dan Pink and Cal Newport. They said, like, don't necessarily pursue this business that you're passionate about, but rather passion follows doing the work, right? It's like I had, on episode 1, had zero passion for podcasting. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know the first thing about it. But over the course of 7.5 years, it's something I've definitely become passionate about through doing the work. And same thing, like I was painting houses in college, and I was like, didn't know anything about house painting, wasn't passionate about that. But after the course of a couple summers, you can't walk past a house without looking up under the eaves. I'll scrape that. I gotta come back, give these guys an estimate on the weekend, and you just start to become a part of the community and it becomes a part of you.
Oh, 100%. And done is better than perfect every single time. And if you put off doing it because you've not got the right equipment or you don't feel like you're quite ready for it, you've got to get the rubbish ones out so that 6 months down the line, you've got the decent ones. And, saying that you've got 50 to 100 episodes before you start getting traction, that's a lot of legwork to put in, not knowing whether it's going to work or not. But also, you've got all that content now. I've listened to some of your earlier episodes, and yes, I can tell a difference between your newer ones and your older ones. I
Well, that's
still
good.
really enjoy the content. I still enjoy it because it's still the content has stayed the same. So I know that when I go all the way back, I'm still getting. It's still got the same theme to it. It's still giving me something. And yes, some of your older ones are a little bit outdated now, but as in like the technology and stuff. But
Yeah.
the people aren't, and the meaning behind it, like that's what I think is really important. And you've just got to, like you said, you've just got to keep plodding along until it actually goes and it works.
Yeah, it took a while. Like for me, the flip that the switch that flipped was figuring out that the show is never going to be, entrepreneur on fire. Like it's never going to be, it's not a business on its own. And I don't know, I had no idea what the business model was starting out. It's just like, hey, everybody says you ought to have a podcast. Let's turn this thing on and see what happens. But the switch that flipped was like starting to treat it as content marketing. And for me, that was generating email subscribers from the podcast. That had never been much of a consideration. But when I started really doubling down on that, really paying attention to that, and what it was for me was creating these episode-specific lead magnets, episode-specific opt-ins. I did like the summary of the episode. Like, here's the highlight reel of the episode. You're out walking the dog, you're driving in the car, you're at the gym. Like, you're not at a great place to take notes. Don't worry, we did it for you. You can go download this file over here. And that worked really, really well.
Yeah, your website is a fantastic resource. Like, I'm not just saying that because you're actually on with me, but I have found myself listening to your episodes. And like you say, I'm in the car, I can't get to it. And I will go onto the website and get the show notes. And, most show notes are kind of a summary of just a block of text. There's so many links and so many like takeaways in yours that you almost don't need to listen. But I do, don't worry.
That was the fear that I had. Like, oh, am I going to cannibalize the listenership? And in some cases, people prefer written text. In a lot of cases, I'm that way too, because I can skim it, in 5 minutes, or I can spend 45 minutes with the full audio version. So I don't blame people who do it that way. And then they, hopefully they'll tune in after the fact to get like the full story and the guests, intonations and what they emphasize. But that's been helpful to try and do the written content as well, just to capture hopefully a different segment of the audience.
Oh yeah, you're reaching people that just, some people hate podcasts. I know lots of people that just won't listen to anything. It's just not their thing. People that hate videos, people that love videos, people that love reading, people that hate reading. And if you can, that's why I do what I do with this, where I have it live just now. So it lives there as a video, and then there's the podcast, and then we write it up as a blog. Well, that's 3 different types of people that consume content in 3 different ways can still enjoy what we've chatted about today, as opposed to it just being, this is the video, and if you missed it, you missed it type thing. So
right.
I think it's good, definitely. So what's next for you?
What's next? Trying to keep the dream alive, man. I feel like I have got the best job in the world, trying to uncover creative side hustle stories and share them with the world. I feel really blessed to be able to do that and to work from home and have probably 3-4 days off a week with the kids. It's a good system. As far as next steps, continuing to produce the show. I'm working on a book project called 1K 100 Ways. It's at 1K100ways.com. It's not available yet, but hopefully putting the finishing touches on it this quarter and getting that out the door, which will feature lots of members of the community and some fun stuff that they've got going on. Um,
Excellent.
I don't know, just kind of keeping on, trying to do the YouTube or rather the Google SEO game a little bit and continue to build the domain authority and all that jazz.
How many team members do you have now at Side Hustle Nation?
Oh, this will be good. Let me see if we can talk about the team, call it like the stack or like the virtual assistant stack these days. So there's a podcast editing service. For me, that's Podcast Fast Track, Kerry Green and his team over there. There is a dedicated writer who is the guy who does those show notes summaries in the UK. That's Phil. There's kind of a general administrative virtual assistant service that I use called OK Relax, which is kind of an affordable, dedicated monthly service out of the Philippines, or most of the assistants are out of the Philippines. And I will say I started doing all of this myself. Like this is, added to the team over the years. I've got a dedicated Pinterest assistant who's trying to breathe new life into my fledgling Pinterest account, trying to see if we can drive some more traffic from that platform, which has been a little bit frustrating because I see other accounts in the personal finance and side hustle space, like with millions of monthly impressions. And it's like, why, what are we doing wrong? So there's that. There is a new bookkeeping service, which is a new addition to the team. That's bench.co. So I've kind of gone down the path of hiring mostly agencies or services rather than like full-time individuals, like very specialized freelancers. And then the other team member I just brought on was kind of a dedicated executive admin to help with some email flow, some customer support, and some content production, content writing as well.
Oh, fantastic! So you've really got quite a lean business there. So if anyone's off, I suppose if it's an agency, there's always someone there that can help you, which is great.
Yeah, it does run very lean. And so I guess a PR service was a new hire too at the end of the year to try and get more press, get more publicity, mainly for the sake of backlinks rather than like I have little desire to be a talking head on the news or anything like that. But we'll see if anything comes of that. Just little experiments, see what works, what doesn't, and go from there. But have run very lean for a lot of years. And I think that is I'll give the example, some friends of mine, March, April last year, like pandemic time, they saw their income get hit 50, 60, 80%. And meanwhile, they had this pretty robust staff that was fully supported at this previous revenue level, but not necessarily at this new reality. And so now they're faced with the really hard decisions of laying people off and switching people to part-time. And it's just a really challenging type of place. I've always tried to run really lean and keep it as a lifestyle business.
Yeah, and it makes you far more agile as well, which I think is important if it's your business, because I guess you want to run something that fits with your life as opposed to fitting your life around your job, which is why we start these things in the first place. I saw a post on your Instagram a little while back about, I can't remember the gentleman's surname, but Chris, someone who's also in the side hustle space, and I just thought it was a really great post because you basically said, when Chris first came about, I thought, what are you stepping into my turf for? Side hustle's my thing. But what you basically realized over time was that the more people that are talking about it, they bring everyone up together. How did that realization come about? Because I know that we can get a bit, we compare and we're a bit like, oh, but this is my turf. Like, how did that feel? And how did you get to that place where you were like, you know what, this works for us all?
Yeah, that was the gut reaction because here comes, he's got a much bigger audience than me, New York Times, multiple best-selling author, and he starts this podcast called Side Hustle School. Meanwhile, I'm running Side Hustle Show. And I'm like, dude, I'm thinking, I'm like, this might be the end for me, but I've never seen a bigger spike in exposure in podcast downloads than that month that he launched. It was just, instant 30% bump over the previous month. And I was like, oh, you know what? I need more New York Times bestselling authors to come into this space. Like this was great. And so I like Chris's work. I respect his work. His books are awesome. He's brought a lot of new people into this space, and I think that was beneficial, and hopefully will continue to cross pollinate audiences in that way.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important. And I mean, it speaks a lot to your personal brand, the fact that you are supporting others in your industry. Because the one thing I hate is when people start tearing each other down. Because we all do something completely different, even if we're doing something very similar. And also, you don't have competition ever, really, when you think about it. There's competition as in we do the same things, but no one will ever have the same journey as you, and no one will ever attract the same people you do, because you are you. And Chris has got a lot more people interested in, he's made it mainstream to talk about side hustles, etc. But when they start looking for content, you come up time and time again, and there'll be lots of people that are just drawn to you, that just they've heard of Chris and that's how they got into it, but they're not into him. That's not their thing. So I love that. I think that's a really great way of looking at it. So it's great. Now, Nick, we'll wrap it up now, but how can everyone find you? I keep talking about Side Hustle Nation, but if you just want to spill it out, and I'll put it in the show notes for them as well, but spill it out to them so anyone who's listening can quickly go and find you.
You bet. So sidehustlenation.com is the home base. If you are the person who is kind of on the sidelines looking for something to get into the game, sidehustlenation.com/ideas is my constantly updated laundry list of different part-time business ideas you can start today. There's no opt-in required over there. And of course, would love to have you tune into the Side Hustle Show in your favorite podcast player app. Like Megan talked about, there are 400 plus episodes. I think the recent ones are probably better than the first 50 or 100 or so, but there's value throughout the archives. Pick and choose your favorites there.
I don't know. I'm going to say that there's some really good old ones in there as well, worth having a dig through. Excellent. Thanks so much, Nick, and I'll speak to you soon.
You bet. Thank you.